coming. Okay. When I was coming to my late Rabbi, with all my questions, and I was confused where to start, he was always saying, start in the middle. So I was thinking about what to start this Shiur, and let's start in the middle. There's a story, a Gada in the Gemara about Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, the compiler of the Mishnah, that before his death, he stood up and he raised both his hands and he said, all my life I toiled in the Torah with all my 10 fingers, and I didn't get pleasure from this world even with a small finger. I don't know how you understand this Agadita, but I hope at the end of the Shiur you'll have more understanding of it. The story, or the question that I would like to turn to you, what in your opinion is the most important story in the Torah? I'm not talking about event, because the event, we all agree that giving of the Torah is the most important event. Without giving of the Torah, there is nothing else. But what's the most important story within the Torah? What do you say? Any opinions? For you, what is the most important story?
I don't know if you call Bereshis a story.
Okay, Bereshis, creation of the world.
Of the world.
Creation of the world.
Birchas Yaakov.
Birchas Yaakov. No, the most important story. For you.
How about the Dora Floga? Even though they did something negative, but the people that they had after.
And Dora Polaga, you mean Tower of Babel?
Yes.
Okay.
They even did something negative. They had what do you call it? Had after. Rashi says it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Even though for a negative thing.
Mechiras Yosef. When I said the most important story, my intention was to ask you, if we just eliminate that story from the Torah, will the whole Torah lose its meaning? Okay, so reevaluate your answers, but I liked particularly the answer about the Tower of Babel. and all our class will be built around it, most probably. But first of all, let us ask a few questions about Tower of Babel. It was always puzzling me. We know from the Torah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that Hashem, manages the relations midah keneged midah, measure against measure. When Yisro came to Moshe in the desert, after he heard all the miracles that Hashem did to Jewish people, what did he say? Now I knew that Hashem is the biggest God. Why? Ki bedavar asher zadu alehem. That midah keneged midah. They did something wrong to Jews, and Hashem did exactly the same. He is the just. He's the epitome of justice. He doesn't do something, incomprehensible. You did something, you get the same. You get paid the same coin. So my question to you, Tower of Babel, and I claim it's the most important story of the Torah. And without the story of Tower of Babel, we cannot comprehend Torah in its entirety at all. So, what was the outcome of the story of Babel?
Diversity.
Diversity of languages, right? So, if Hashem did that to them, many different languages appeared. What did they do to get such a reaction from Hashem?
Communists.
They built the tower. How it matches what Hashem gave them back. They wanted to fight God. How does it matches what they got back? You understand my question?
Because they were all on one machshava, one thing. So now you spread them apart. You're not going to have all the people agreeing on one negative thing like that.
So you might
Yeah, one guy had that idea.
It's not- it's a-
Everyone else would agree with it.
yeah, but again, it's not measuring against measure. It should be measure against measure. They got languages, therefore it should be something that has to do with the language. And if you read the Torah, it's very explicit over there.
You can say they were abusive about the language, so therefore
They were abusive about the language, and the Torah tells exactly the story of it. How comes, you ask? So for that, you have source number 1, Bereshis, Perek Yud Aleph, and the Torah tells it straight. Vayhi chol haaretz safa achas udvarim achadim. The whole world was one language, and how do you translate dvarim achadim?
One idea, one
Literally, how do you translate?
common things.
common thing.
Common things. What's the pshat? Common things.
One trust.
If they all had the same way, they all spoke the same way, they all thought the same thing, they had the same idea, so when they had an idea, hey, let's go up there and get together. Oh, great idea, let's all do it together.
But it's not דברים אחדים. זה אותם מחשבות. אותם רעיונות. Why is it said דברים אחדים? Same, like if you translate literally, same things, or same words.
Some words, but
Let's say same words, but if we translated same words, then it's redundancy. We
Right.
already said it. Safachas,
Right, that's true.
same language, one language.
yeah.
They spoke one language. There was no other language, and they used the same words. But it's not. Isn't it a definition of the same language that you use same words? Therefore, it's it demands our understanding. Demands that we will somehow put some mental, intellectual efforts into understanding this. So there was a famous linguist in 19th, 20th centuries, Ferdinand de Saussure, that he said that every language sign, word is language sign, right? We write something, it's a word. And he said that it has an inherent duality into it. By that he meant to say that when we say cup, it's not the same as the appearance of cup. Right? Or we say book.
Symbol is not
I
the
say
same
book.
as what it
I
symbolizes.
say book, book does not appear over here.
Right.
But then I present you a certain thing, and you understand that we call the thing a book.
Right. Symbol can never be the same what it
Right.
what
The
it
symbol
symbolizes.
cannot be the same, never can be the same, almost never can be the same.
This language is symbolism. It's not the same thing.
Like, language has nothing to do with material world.
Real world, right.
But when we look into this text, we see one language. And what was the feature of that language? That udvarim achadim. The word was equal to the object. You say something, you say cup, and cup appears. You say uncup, it disappears. This...
Oh, so the Safa Echas and Dvarim Achadim, it's saying the Safa and the Dvarim were Achadim.
So Safa, the language that had this feature that the words and the objects were the same. We are now in the middle of the parashas that are talking about building of the Mishkan, right? And who was the main architect of the Mishkan? Bezalel. Why he was so special? Because he knew how to connect the letters of the Hebrew of Holy Tongue,
Right.
to influence the material world.
Right.
So he knew how to connect them, and so that was the feature of the Holy Tongue. When you have this power to harness the letters, the words of the language to create the world. And that's, in my opinion, the ultimate meaning of us being created in the image of God, that by talking, initially, Adam and the generation till the Tower of Babel were able to create just by talking. And they still have some remnants
Abracadabra.
of abracadabra, for example, famous. What is abracadabra? Like Gentiles don't know what does it mean. But when you read it in the Aramaic language, abracadabra, I create as I speak. Or like even just a very simple like magic spell, right? Spell, the same word as like to spell the word, to say it through its letters. Okay, so you use the letters to create the world.
You're saying the people of the Dorach
They knew.
they conjured up the objects just by saying things?
Yes. That's what Safa Achat Udvarim Achadim. You say it comes into being. But it is
That was the Midah Midah.
that's right. But it's not very convenient. You cannot talk. You can't have like small talk. You cannot gossip about somebody because you talk and the whole bunch of things happen around you. So they decided, and that's the meaning of all the midrashim, that they wanted to fight God because they wanted to disconnect themselves from this ability. From this being created in the image of God, they wanted to talk and not to create. All right? And the Torah very precisely explains how did it happen. First of all, you see here in the first source, it is highlighted. So first they said, the Torah explains how they were creating things. Hava nilbena levini. They said Hava nilbena. There you go. You have levini. Nisrefa, already saruf, already burnt.
Sefa.
Yeah. And then they decided to.
So you point out to that kind of linguistic thing here in the language, right? That you have the same word appearing first as a verb, and then which is an
As a
action,
noun.
and then as an object.
Yes.
Which is the same word. You have the verb.
Same
and then
root. Same root, and
becomes
that's
an
very
action
important.
becomes an object.
Right. An action becomes an object just by speaking. Because it says, Vayomru ish Israel, hava nilvena levini. So it was implied already. But then they started to change the rules of the language. Change the rules of the Holy Tongue. Vatihi lahem haleveino le'oven. Same, almost same root. But they changed it. Instead of lamed, they put aleph, and they dropped hey. They had levena before, now they have even. When they want to talk about brick, they don't talk anymore levena, because then it appears. They say even, and they think about levena, about the brick, and it doesn't appear. And also, they changed the vowel system, because you see, v'cheimar elam lachoimer. The clay was to them to cement. Right? Mm-hmm. So, now we see what was their sin. They
Was it
totally...
Genetically modifying the language.
Yes, they genetically modified the language. Exactly.
They did the GM,
They changed the
GML, yeah.
They changed the DNA of Holy Tongue. And therefore, the punishment was accordingly. You wanted your own language, there you go. You can have it. But look at the result, what it brings. The separation, the misunderstanding, the conflict, the tension, the war, the death. Right? But it wouldn't be fair if there will be nobody who will remember the initial language, the pre-Tower of Babel language. But who can be the carrier of that language? Who can be the person in charge of preserving that language? And the Torah says it also immediately. The Torah doesn't have any secrets from us. The Torah builds for us very clear understanding. In Posuk Yud, the same chapter 11, we have Ele told us Shem. It was Shem, he is the person who was charged with keeping the Holy Tongue. As much as remained from it, we should understand. It wasn't the exact language, because
Well, at some point they stopped creating things.
probably Hashem took from them this ability. We see how the idol worshipping became idol worshipping. First, people saw the great power in Hashem's servants, His Son, and all these big forces, and they started to worship them as individual deities. So there will be the same story with the language. If you see a person who can create by talking, you would not. First, you will be afraid of a person, and you will be, you'll see this person as a sorcerer, as a person who has special powers, a person who is a god by himself, nothing to do with his image of God and the ability to create, and the need for you also to learn this language. All right, so Hashem probably took a lot of this power from the initial language, but we still have the structure of the Holy Tongue. We still have phonetics. We still have the alphabet. We still have this potential to connect to God through one language, through the Holy Tongue.
The whole concept of linguistic relativity only started once they veered from the one language which actually represents the objects. Because once it's artificial, so then I make up a word and plaster it on an object, it doesn't really represent the object. It's what I perceive the object as, and then if I say the same word to you, you might not understand the same thing. It's just a word to you, but my vision of what that represents is different than your vision. You're saying that's
okay. That was born there. Recently, I heard an article on radio about a new theory in linguistics about Sino-Caucasian family of languages. It's like a hypothesis, a theory. It's only 100 years old. So they found a lot of similarities between languages of Caucasus, like Georgian, Armenian, and Chinese language. You'll think, where's Caucasus and where's China? But yet they found this is one family of languages. So I heard in this article that main important families of languages appeared in the world like 5,000-6,000 years ago, according to the calculations of the scientists. And they say, before that there was one language, and then suddenly we don't know why they spread to main families of language. There was something,
catalyst.
It was some event that they don't know they have no any evidence and don't have any even suggestions what can it be. But it's for them it's already a known fact that there was one language and then many languages in the whole world simultaneously. Okay, so then we have a new development that all the kids, all the children of Shem were supposed to be the carriers of this, I call it the covenant of Holy Tongue. They were that was their divine service, to preserve this language, because talking in this language and praying in this language was the service of God. Like we read Torah, like we pray using the Holy Tongue, that's what did Shem and all his descendants, all his kids, until Abraham. Abraham got the ultimate rights to this covenant. And this is a known story about Melchizedek, which is supposed to be Shem. When he first blessed Avram, and only then he blessed
Number
Hashem.
2.
Yeah, this is the source number 2. After the war with the kings, when Avram defeated all the armies of the kings, so he came to return the possessions of Melech Sdom, Vayetze Melech Sdom Likaso, and Acharei Kaso Ikav Dar Laomer. So they meet, King of Sdom and Avram, they meet, but also Melchizedek Melech Shalem, Hatzilaim Yain Lechem Yain Ve'el Kohen Le'Eliyon. So there was a third party in this party, Melchizedek. And Torah explains, Ve'el Kohen Le'Eliyon, and he is a servant of the most high God, of the supreme God. So, and that's why, although Torah doesn't tell us who was Melchizedek, but the tradition says it was Shem, because the only divine service possible at that time was nothing else but keeping this holy tradition of Holy Tongue. Something that had a potential, and still has a potential to unite the whole humankind. And that's in a sense still the purpose and the goal of the Torah, to bring us all back to this one language and to unite all in one service. But Melchizedek does a grave mistake. So he blesses, Melchizedek first blesses Avram, and then he blesses Hashem, and then he as a result, his descendants, his seed, loses their ability to be keepers of this covenant. And instead, Avram and his descendants become new carriers of this covenant. So, the last story of Avram's life is the story with the sons of concubines, Bnei Pelagshim. In source number 3, you can see that story, that he married another woman, her name was Keturah, and they had 16 kids and grandkids. And then, Olivnei Pelagshim Asher Avram Natan Avram Matanot, and to the sons of concubines that to Avram gave gifts, and he sent them to Kedma El Eretz Kedem, to the east, to the eastern country. And the Torah emphasizes, right? It's not only just to east. Go to east. No. To east. To eastern country. Go and go and go and go and go until you reach the end of the world. And don't forget, if we are talking about the land of Israel, they were considering themselves as the end of the world. Right? Because what was...
Western, you mean westwise?
To westwise. It was only sea.
For the Egypt,
But more or less. Like, that was, especially if you remember the Fertile Crescent, it went from Egypt, but Egypt was to south. And Mesopotamia was to northeast. All right? So, but western-wise, the land of Israel is the last stop.
Yam HaGadol, right? So
Right? Yam HaGadol.
That's the
great sea.
western, right.
Okay, you've reached the end of the world. So you turn yourself
the other way.
the other way. Okay, where is the whole humankind? They're over there. Right? To the east, to the eastern countries. So go, but what's the purpose? You know, all the traditional explanations of why did Abraham do this, like to get rid of these children, he gave them some, Shem Tumah, as Gemara says, and you can see it on the second page. Natan Avraham Matanot, and Rashi says, Shem Tumah Masalem. the name of impurity. This is ridiculous. I really like. Do you think about a person big as Abraham was, and he was proclaimed the king, as we see in the source number 2 also. Then Rashi brings the Midrash Haggadah, that all the nations came together and they proclaimed Avram to be their king, Nasi Elokim, the Katzin, to be their chief commander, and to be the prince of God in their midst. So he was the greatest man in the whole entire world at that time, spiritually, and even Katzin, it's somebody who gives orders, who can command people. And he would do such a ridiculous thing to teach his kids, into whom he put how many years of his life did he put in these kids? Let's say Yitzchak was 37 and Abraham was 137 when Sarah died, right? So let's say a few years, 2, 3, 4 years it took Abraham to remarry. So he was 140, let's say, for the convenience, right? He died when he was 175. So it's good 35 years of his life he invested in these kids. Spiritually, physically, emotionally, right? And then you tell me that he gave them Shem Tumah just to get rid of them? To send them far away from Yitzhak? That was his concern? Really? I don't believe you. Especially that Shem Tumah, this notion, the name of impurity, does not appear in the whole entire Talmud any more than once. And it's in a reference to these matanot, to these gifts. So this is it's something suspicious. It doesn't smell good. It can't be real. Because if Torah doesn't know this notion in any other place, Shem Tumah, the name of impurity, rather than this matanot, and why you call them matanot, gifts, it's something very suspicious, right? So there should be probably, and we know that sometimes our sages then hide true concepts, true meaning of the words behind something more more understandable. What do I mean? You know the saying, there's no better way to hide something than to put it in the most visible place, right? So I claim that here it's the same. The sages hid something in this place, and it's the most visible because it screams to us, don't take me literally. There is no such thing as Shem Tumah. And if you just get if you get it as the real meaning of the Haggadah, this is wrong, as Rambam rightfully wrote it. That what is the Haggadah? Haggadah is just a small candle to be used in the dark room to show you the way to the truth. So this is the same. This is the candle.
So it's a metaphor. It's nothing else.
It's not even a metaphor. It's just it's like stop. It's like a red light. Stop. Start thinking. There is no other place in the whole Talmud when the Torah uses Shem Tumah. So think, what is this? And doesn't fit Avraham at all to be giving his sons Shem Tumah, name of impurity. It's ridiculous, right? And especially that was the last deed of his life. And we all know from the Torah that before his death, a person, gives the most important orders, especially if it's a great person. So just to get rid of people in whom you invested 35 years of your life doesn't make any sense. And especially if you take into account the words of Sforno, which you can find on the second page, second from the top. Sforno says about the people, about these kids that we used to see as children of Abraham. He writes, "Gidlavisam beveisai." She raised them in his house. She gidlavisam shelo hayu banei klal. They weren't her children at all. Ki omnam Avraham lo halid ki Yitzchak v'Ishmael. And Avraham only had Yitzchak and Ishmael. So biologically speaking, only Yitzchak and Ishmael, they were Avram's sons, and all the rest, all these people, they are not.
They were adopted, basically.
They were probably adopted at the very last moment.
Were her kids?
Again, Sforno says they weren't neither her nor his. They were, like, what can it be? Adopted? No. It's like these people are students, these people are, like, they are to be prepared to a certain mission. Right? Mm-hmm. So Abraham, being a carrier of this covenant of Holy Tongue, he understood that you cannot do it like one person, two people, three people, him, Yitzchak, Shmuel. How much can they influence the world? You need much more people. So therefore he gathered all these people, and the Torah, when Torah writes down all their names, Torah writes Uvnei Dedan Hayu Ashurim L'Tushim L'Umim, and this is highlighted in source number 3, and Onkel is translated Havolim Ashariyan, the Meshkunin, the Negavan. These are vocations, not the names. Alright? So they were prepared, Abraham prepared them to a certain mission. And he sent them towards, just before his death, he sends them to basically to influence the whole entire world. Because I alone cannot do it already. And Yitzchak is bound to Holy Land, right? Because he was to be only there. So who will go and who will continue to spread the knowledge of the Holy Tongue? We need somebody, right? We need somebody who will be, besides all the Torah stuff, all the mitzvahs of the Torah, we need somebody who will be just going and teaching people to just understand what Torah has to say to all the world, right? So these people were sent to the east, to the eastern country, to the end of the world. And actually it's very interesting that the tradition of Hinduism, Vedic tradition, says that the Vedas, that they're considered to be the knowledge, the most important spiritual knowledge of Far East, they were brought to India by a few people from West, that came from West, which fits our story very well.
What's Shem Tumah?
What's Shem Tumah? This is a very important question. So we know that the Jewish tradition ascribes to Avraham authorship of one of the most important and most mysterious books of Jewish mysticism, of Kabbalah, which is called Sefer Yetzirah. And in the source number 4, you have the excerpts from Sefer Yetzirah, from the first Mishnah and from the last Mishnah. And what unites them, they use as I call it, the framework of the Sefer Yetzirah. It's a very short book. It's not even a book, it's like a booklet, pamphlet. It's like 6 chapters, 6 short chapters. Altogether, the tradition says they have 60 Mishnayos. We have different versions of the book, which have different numbers, but more or less about the same number, around 60. So there are no, insignificant words in this book. There are no unneeded metaphors. There are no, accidental pieces of information in this book, especially when all the versions are mentioned. So what is the framework? The framework has to do with the fingers. Because the Mishnah says, Eser Sfirot Blima b'mispar Eser Etzbaot. That we have 10 spheres, and there are hundreds, thousands probably, book are written in Kabbalah just to explain what is sphere, what are spheres. Nevertheless, and the Sefer Yetzirah is the first book that brings this notion about spheres. Some understand it as a spiritual, some channels, tools of influence, something that God, creates the world, rules the world, connects the world. But the Mishnah says, 10 spheres with the untangible, blima, they're untangible, and they fit the number of 10 fingers. And one of the very important commentators on this book says, 10, it's not says that we have 10 fingers because there are 10 spheres. He emphasizes, read it very carefully. There are 10 spheres because 10 fingers. So what is first? What is primarily? Fingers. What is secondary? Spheres. And then we have 2 verses in Tehillim that look to contradict each other. One verse says, Le'olam Hashem dvarcha nitzav b'shamayim, which means, as we understand it, that Hashem created this world by talking, by speaking into the world into being. But from the other hand, King David says, Ki yireh shamecha ma'aseh etzba'osecha. When I see the heavens, the deed of your fingers. One moment, I don't understand. How the heavens were created? With what? With the words? With the fingers of God. So the only understanding is that they're both. With the words and with the fingers. And that's why the Sefer Yetzirah starts like 32 different paths of creation of the world, which include 10 spheres and 22 letters. So it's not like God was using both words, both letters of the Holy Tongue and fingers. So now, how did he use fingers? We don't know. But most probably, and that were the matanos, that were the gifts that Abraham revealed to his adopted children. They were mudras. Mudras, they are finger gestures, symbolic finger gestures. Or they're also called seals. Seals, and interestingly enough, source number 5, this is American Heritage Dictionary, brings etymology of the word mudra. You see Sanskrit, mudra, seal, mystery, mudra from Iranian, mudra perhaps. Okay. Object bearing a royal inscription. And remember, Abraham was a king, a prince. So this is an inscription, and also this is something royal, something that belongs to Abraham. And also from Sumerian, name and write. So you write with it your name. So you write your name with fingers. And you can ask me definitely, where did you find in Judaism that you write your name with your fingers? It's something we never probably heard of it, but you're wrong. You heard it many times. when you talk about Yad Vashem, whether you refer to the Museum of Holocaust in Jerusalem, Yad Vashem, or just the regular meaning of this of these words, of this idiom in Hebrew, what is Yad Vashem? It's a monument, right? So
Yeshaya, it's from Yeshaya.
why it's Yad Vashem, which literally from Hebrew is hand and name, right? If you don't think about the ability to write your name with your fingers, then you have no any understanding what these two have in common. But if you get this idea that you can actually write your name or any name with fingers, then it makes perfect sense. Somehow you can see that monument could be some kind of representation of fingers that holding a certain name. For example, in Shnei Luchos Habris, this famous encyclopedia of Jewish life and Jewish mysticism, Rabbi Horowitz brings, for example, that during Birkas Kohanim, you can literally write the name Shin Dalet Yud, God's name, with your fingers, and he explains how to do it. He says, like pinky, ring finger, and middle finger, they comprise letter Shin. Then index finger, bent, is letter Dalet, and then small, like the thumb, is letter Yud. So this is one of the usages of Shem, Yad Vashem, hand and the name. But Abraham gave to his students the knowledge and how to do all the letters of the Hebrew alphabets, or the alphabets of Holy Tongue, and Sefer Yetzirah actually goes through the letters.
With the single fingers?
So like how to do the letters, actual way of doing each and every letter does not appear in Sefer Yetzirah. And in my opinion, these are the oral traditions that were accompanying the personal study of the Sefer Yetzirah, when people studied on a very serious level. And we have traditions that people used Sefer Yetzirah to create things, right? Using the letters and fingers, obviously. But that knowledge was forgotten by majority of Jews, or maybe by all of us, I don't know. Because it was forgotten once, like when we were in Egypt, it was forgotten, and then Yitro has to come and to reteach Jews many different sciences, which he learned when he went to Far East, and he was specifically searching for gifts of Avraham, and Sfas Emes brings it. So he went there, learned it, and then he came back to bring back the gifts of Avraham to his descendants. So I spent many years of trying to find some right mudras, right finger gestures, and for a while I was entertaining myself with the thought maybe I need to find another word, Hebrew word, for mudra. But then I decided that it's good to stick to this word, because it also reminds us of the source from which everything started, and actually the Tower of Babel, because mudra has almost same letters as the word Nimrod. And Nimrod was the king who was like building this tower. It just has it in different order. Mudra, Nimrod, and the root letters are the same, just different orders. So I like this resemblance. So I spent many years in order to try to find the right mudras for each letters, and you have just a small version of big poster that I have, that big, for people who like study it and whatever, who want really come closer to initial Lashon HaKodesh, to the initial Hebrew, and you can also ask why the fingers are so important. That's why they have this picture of homunculus. Homunculus is the imaginable image of a human being, which could have been if every part of our body was the size, proportionally to its representation in our brain. So as you can see, our hands, the most represented organ in our brain. So when we write anything in Hebrew with the fingers, it's not just we are there. We become that letter. We become that word. And actually, I claim that doing this, you can fulfill a mitzvah that many of us cannot fulfill in our life, and actually it's writing the Sefer Torah. You can, because what's the main purpose of writing the Sefer Torah? Rosh says the main purpose of this mitzvah is to study Torah. That's why Rosh says today, when you actually don't study, when you have Torah scroll. Nobody studies from the scroll. That's why you buy the books. But actually, if you do this, you become Sefer Torah, actually. And you can also see the small illustration to what the Gemara and the Shabbos refers to, that the hand of the human being is for Amos. Right? You remember this? That the hand is considered to be a reshus in itself.
Mar Shabbos.
Yeah, more on Shabbos. That's what I said. The hand considered to be for Amos, like reshus in itself. Look at this. Yeah, it's more than 4 Amos. And just Mavhila Rayon. It's just amazing how did our Chachomim, our sages, could measure how we perceive our body inside our brains. So, there is a source I just brought, out of many sources where you can see that in the time of prophets, in the time of the Nevi'im, they definitely used some version of signing letters. Hen al kapayim chakosicha. And it says Rashi, what does it mean, Hen al kapayim chakosicha, which literally be translated, I did, imprinted you on my hands, right? On my palms. Al kapay ro'eni kilo ad chakuka al kapay lirotech lezachrech tamid. I see you as if you're engraved in my hands, right? To be able to remember you always. So you can, when you do it with the finger gestures, you can definitely see it. And then it's it's engraved in you, chakoticha. It's really, really engraved in you, in your being, because it goes inside your brain, inside your being, more than anything else in the world. So, that was my short, I hope short, presentation. I skipped a lot of information, a lot of many examples, but now we started from Rabbi Yehuda Hanossi, and you can understand why did he say, all my life I told in the Torah with 10 fingers, because he probably did this. And this is Rabbi Yehuda Hanossi that gives us in Agada the simonim for the plagues. Dam, Tzvardeh, Kinim, but he says Datsash. What does it mean? If you sign it with your fingers, then it makes perfect sense.
Okay, thank you so much. That's your
Sure.
call. Yeah.